Okay, today I'm going to show you an 8-step tutorial on how to make my sticky sweet candied pecan cinnamon rolls. And this recipe will give you 1.5 dozen of cinnamon rolls, which is great for family events. To make this recipe super fast and easy, today we're going to use bread machine dough, but you can use any dough you like. And at the end, I've included an alternate recipe. So you might ask yourself, wait, why are we using a bread machine? Well, using a bread machine that has a dough setting is helpful because it'll save you a ton of time and a ton of stress. It normally only takes 1.5 hours from the bread machine mixing the ingredients until the dough is fully risen. So it's a great tool, and it also cuts down on the stress of why isn't my dough rising? Because inside it generates the perfect amount of heat and moisture for the bread to rise every single time. So we're going to go ahead and use the bread machine, but you can skip the dough step if you'd like, and you can make your own dough. So before you dump all your ingredients into the bread machine, try just adding the flour first and then form a well in the center and add the warm water and make sure the water is warm. Then add your yeast to the warm water, put the lid down on the bread machine and just let it sit for 10 minutes. And this will help activate the yeast. And now after taking a 10-minute break, add all the other ingredients and give it a good stir and make sure that no loose flour will be stuck at the bottom by the mixing blade. Okay, so our dough is definitely done. Sometimes with this amount of dough, it has a tendency to overflow the bread machine metal pan. So just keep an eye on the dough and open the lid and stop the bread machine early if the dough looks like it's about to overflow. It's okay, it is finished rising, and you can punch down the dough too, and it will rise again. And I do this when I need more time. This is due to us adding the extra 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast instead of 1 teaspoon like the recipe calls for. This is what leaves our dough super pillowy soft and fluffy. So here's our ingredients, and we're gonna put all of that in a skillet on medium-high heat on the stove, and until the bubbles start forming nicely, then we're gonna go ahead and add the pecans to the mixture, and we're gonna stir them and coat them really well, and we'll just keep stirring them until the mixture is kind of clinging onto the pecans and some of the moisture is gone. And it doesn't take very long at all, just try not to burn them. Let's go ahead and dump them right onto some prepared parchment paper and try to spread them with our spatula or your spoon as well as we can. What we want to do is while dumping our candied pecans onto the parchment paper, we have to make sure we start spreading them quickly because they harden fast. While they are still warm, you can even break up the large chunks that have cooled and stuck together with your hands. You can store candied pecans in an airtight container for up to 2 weeks. If you'd like, you can save all the candied pecans to keep the crunchy, thick-coated topping to sprinkle on the cinnamon rolls at the end after they are all baked. Baking the candied pecans causes them to lose most of their thick coat, but the richness melts into the topping and it still makes the topping extra delicious. It's up to you, whatever you prefer. I like to just go ahead and candy all the pecans, and half of them I'll use for baking and half of them I'll use to sprinkle at the top at the end. So let's get our filling ingredients ready. And don't forget the extra special spices. And And after you've melted the butter in a separate bowl and mixed the brown sugar with all the spices, let's just set those aside for now. And here's the glass baking pans that I'll be using. And let's spray them with nonstick cooking spray. So to save time, I just like to melt my butter in the microwave. And then I'm gonna add in the sweet mixture and give it a good stir until it's well blended. And you'll have more mixture than the picture. I'm just showing you right now one pan. Pour the topping into your pans. So fill your 9x13 glass baking pan with most of the topping, but be sure to leave around 1/3 of the topping for another smaller baking pan of your choice. I use a 7x11 rectangle glass baking pan, but you can use a round pan or whatever you want. What I hate about most basic recipes is that they usually never make enough. If you want to make one gorgeous pan of cinnamon rolls to take to work or to a friend's, you don't want to steal a cinnamon roll out of that pan just to try it. And this recipe allows you to make one large pan and a smaller pan for your family or for tasting. And you can arrange all the oddly shaped end pieces into the smaller pan. And then we're just gonna spread all of that yummy filling all over the bottom of our pan, just enough to coat it so you can't see underneath. Let's place all the pecans you want on top of that yummy sticky topping. And we'll just use the rest of these, or when we're done baking, they can go on top to make it even extra crunchier. So, we're back to our bread. The best part, yes, and the most challenging part too. So this is the feel-good part. Now take your bread out of your bread machine, and it's going to be a little bit sticky, so lightly flour it and flour your surface and work with it and knead it a little bit, but make sure you don't over knead it and don't over flour it. So you want it nice and fluffy. So now you're going to want to roll out your dough and form it into a rectangle shape the best that you can. And it's ideally supposed to be 3/4 inches thick, but mine's more like a 1/2 inch thick, but that's okay. And I'm going to say that mine's 2 foot long by about a little over 1 foot wide. Sorry, I don't have the exact inches, blueprint brain. So we'll take that butter from the filling that we made earlier, we melted earlier, and we'll just brush that on the bread in a nice even layer coat. And now we'll just take our filling mixture and sprinkle it nice and evenly all over the brushed dough. You can use your spatula, that's what I did. And just try to get it a little bit nice and thick like the picture so that you can't see any of the dough underneath. So now I'm just kind of pinching the first fold on that dough, and then I'm going to keep rolling as tight as I can. Now I'm just kind of stretching it ever so slightly. And success! There's our log. Now I'm going to show you how to use dental floss to make your cuts. Use some ordinary dental floss to cut your cinnamon roll dough to create that perfect cinnamon roll. You can also use a serrated knife, but the cut will not be as clean. So you're going to place the dental floss underneath the cinnamon roll, making each roll about 1.5 inches thick. And then using both your hands, taking the floss in the opposite directions, you're going to put up some pressure and pull until it's completely sliced. Now we're just going to place the cinnamon roll rounds flat side down on top of the melted mixture in the glass pan. And you want to space them 1 to 2 inches apart. I just spaced mine 1 inch apart, which is fine. If these were thicker, they might need to be farther apart. And there's our big pan, and there's our baby pan. So let's go ahead and set our oven for 375. And we're going to let them raise in the meantime. And I like to turn on my extra little oven at the bottom. I turn it on warm and keep the door slightly open to raise the bread faster. And you can also keep them on the top of your stove if your oven is on underneath. And so now they've pretty much doubled in size, so I'm going to go ahead and bake them. Obviously, the baking time varies for each different oven, but the rule of thumb is to bake always at 375 degrees for 30 minutes. However, your time may be different from 25 to 35 minutes. Mine baked for 26 minutes and were a nice golden brown. And so here's a couple of snapshots when they just came out of the oven. Now don't let this part scare you, it's really easy. Place the serving tray on top of the baking dish. Firmly grasp both dishes and then flip the pan quickly. And then carefully remove the top pan. Oh my, look how good we did. Now you can sprinkle on those extra candied pecans for that extra special touch on the top. We've mastered this. And let's check out our extra baby pan. Oh my gosh, they look so good. You really have got to make this recipe. It is so melt in your mouth good. And those extra spices just knock it out of the park. It's not like a regular cinnamon roll where it's all just cinnamon. Those extra spices really kick it up and give it like a richness. A little sticky and completely delicious. Happy baking, and leave comments once you've tried it.